So very good evening to everybody. Just gone 7 o'clock here in the UK, and welcome to the first of our webinars for May. We didn't have one last week due to the D91 conference and the fact that everybody was absolutely shattered, but it's great to see everybody here this evening. Jamie is going to be our speaker this evening, and before we start, just the usual bit of housekeeping rules. For those of you who haven't been on one of these before, this is being recorded, so if you are hiding from law enforcement, then please make sure you're wearing a balaclava or turning your cameras off. We don't mind which, but we'd prefer to see people's faces as much as possible. And this will be going up onto YouTube at some point in the next week or so. So you'll be able to look back if you miss any bits of this. If you have to leave early, don't worry about it. It is all being recorded and we'll send out the links once it's been uploaded. If you can, please make sure during the session that you've got your microphones turned off. It's just to make sure we don't have any disruption to Jamie's presentation. We will give people plenty of opportunity at the end of the session to be able to open their mics and ask any questions they've got. If you do have anything pertinent that you'd like to put in the chat, any questions for Jamie or just generally around the subject that Jamie's talking about, please put it in the chat. We will get to those questions, so don't worry about that. And finally, just make sure you enjoy yourselves this evening. It's going to be a really, really interesting session. It's going to be one of those that will hopefully really empower you when it comes to sales and to be able to get more members for your clubs. So the speaker this evening, bearing in mind he's a salesman, I'm not sure how much of his bio I want to believe, because we all know what salespeople are like. But he is a man that has done a lot of sales. He's also a chartered CFA, which is a chartered financial advisor. Is that correct, Jamie?
I think it's analyst, actually, but yeah,
financial analyst.
That's something I did a while.
Also, former president of Holborn Speakers. But essentially, the reason that we've got Jamie here tonight is because of his background in sales. He was the #1 first-time European salesman for a company called Southwest Advantage. He then also went on doing 5 years at Procter Gamble. So he knows his business, he knows how to do sales, and this is going to be really, really fascinating. So Jamie, the floor is yours. Please enjoy.
Thank you so much, Andy. Awesome. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for spending this time on your busy Sunday evenings to slow down and learn a little bit. And my real focus throughout this will be making sure you've used your time wisely and providing value. And I'm going to be, in a way, I'm going to be condensing a lot of what I've learned in the most valuable parts of a really long project, and hopefully condensing it down into something that you can take away that will help you to take action, and we'll condense some of the key lessons that I took out of a big project that I'm doing recently. I want to apologize in advance. Instead of using slides, I'm going to be using virtual backgrounds, which I hope works well, but it's not going to make for smooth transitions. You're going to be seeing my face up close and personal sometimes while I change backgrounds. I've moisturized today to make sure my pores are looking good accordingly. But I'm going to be using these to tell a few stories, a few anecdotes from the biggest 5 lessons I learned while interviewing 116 people and condensing their wisdom. 3 of whom, I should add, are on the call today, and condensing their wisdom into a book of 100 lessons around sales, persuading, and influencing. And I'm also going to try and bring it back to Toastmasters and how these ideas and these forms of persuasion can be useful in both your day-to-day life and in your Toastmasters journey. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me and my story. Andy very kindly touched on some of the most salient points, but a few things you should know about me in advance. One is I am, as some might say, a mongrel or a mutt. Others might say well-traveled, but I've lived in a lot of different places. So I was born in Australia. My family are based in Bermuda, and I grew up there. I went to high school in the States. And at some point in Bermuda, when I was 8 years old, I realized I wanted to be in sales. I think it's a little bit unusual. I think most people fall into sales, but I had a taste for it early on, selling raffle tickets, which I think is quite a common story. You know, you're given raffle tickets, you're told to go out there, be entrepreneurial, find a way to get people to buy them. But I distinctly remember I was selling raffle tickets in my dad's insurance company. And it was going phenomenally. You know, I was young and cute, and my dad was the boss, so everyone basically had to say yes. And but then someone surprisingly said no. She said, "Look, I bought from you last year, didn't work. I don't feel like doing it. I'm having a bad day. Like, I'm not going to buy from you." And that was shocking to me. I think that may be the first time I remember being told no in my life. But I slowed down and I thought, you know what? At the end of the day, I've spoken to so many people and I've sold so many raffle tickets that it doesn't matter. And if it wasn't right for her, it wasn't right for her. I think that being okay with being told no, and that getting over the fear of rejection is really what helped me to stay in sales and to prosper in that field. I then went to Edinburgh University, and one of the most formative moments of my life was stumbling out of an Edinburgh University lecture hall into the blinding sunlight, and a girl approaching me and saying, "Hey, do you want to run your own business in the United States of America this summer?" Of course I did. I didn't have anything going on that summer. That sounded brilliant. What she didn't mention is that this job involved going door to door, selling educational books for 80 hours per week. And it was tough. I cried on my first day, cried on my second day, cried on my third day, but I persevered. And it actually ended up being one of the more valuable experiences of my life. It's helped shape my network. It's helped, develop discipline. And basically everything I do, post going door to door in a foreign country for a 12-week internship, is going to be easier as a result. As Andy mentioned, I then spent 5 years working for Procter Gamble in the biggest consumer goods company and what was at that point the largest sales organization in the world. I'm thankful that I became a Toastmaster. My friend Theo, who we'll touch on later, recommended it to me. And I came in thinking I'm going to be a world champion speaker, but have learned a lot, as I'm sure a lot of people on this call can attest to. I've done a lot more on the leadership and the coaching and the evaluation side than anything else. 2 years ago, I founded a business called React News. A couple of people from the React team are here tonight. I previously worked for Gartner, which is a market-leading sales organization where I learned a lot. And React News has been a successful startup story. So within 20 months, we were acquired by a larger company called Green Street, who I now work for and will for the foreseeable future. But a successful story of having a market-leading product, in this case, real estate news, and commercializing that and persuading people that it was the right product to buy for them and their needs. So that's my background, which I hope gives a little bit of credence to what I'm saying. But the real reason that I am here today is a project I then undertook simultaneously while working. I wanted to really find out what makes the top salespeople tick, and what it is that is the secret sauce to becoming a sales leader. So I started by writing a book about myself, my own journey. I'd started at B2C sales at Procter Gamble, business to consumer. I'd moved across to B2B sales with Gartner and then React News. So I wanted to tell people, I think that the more sales-oriented a company is and the more profitable they are, the better the salespeople are treated within that company, which makes sense, right? Your commissions are going to be greater, your perks are going to be better if the company can afford to do so. So I wanted to share a little bit of my journey throughout time and how I have found different aspects and arenas of sales. The problem is it was a very short book. Only ended up being 10,000 words, and the average book was about 30,000 words. So I then went ahead and I tried to flesh it out by interviewing people I've met on my way, and I got referred to other people, and things could have snowballed. I ended up doing 116 interviews, of which 95 are published on exceptionalsalescareer.com, and writing a book, which ended up being 50,000 words. So For those counting at home, that's 60%, 66% more than my publisher asked my book to be. So it is a pretty weighty tome, but hopefully laden with really high quality insights into what the best salespeople and business leaders believe about sales. And I'm going to share with you the 5 most important things that I learned today. Now, before we get into that, I want to just quickly impress on you why sales matters at all. You know, why should you be listening to this, and why, even if you're not in sales, which I know many people on the call aren't, why should you care about sales? Well, I think there are a few reasons. One is a lot of you will be in sales. Statistically, about 1 in 5 people is in a sales or market-facing or negotiation-specific position where one of their key criteria is selling. So if you were to group together, you know, finance people and people, you know, lawyers and all that, actually sales would be the largest group of employed people. So it is relevant directly to a lot of people. But in Daniel Pink's seminal book, To Sell is Human, he did a huge research study of what percentage of time people spend influencing and persuading. And the answer comes out 40%. Whether that's persuading your kids to eat healthy, whether it's persuading your dog to sit, which is something I've been struggling with over the past 6 months of having a puppy. Whether it's influencing a coworker to choose your proposal over another proposal, that's what you spend 40% of your time on. So saying you're on average, so saying you're not in sales is in a way very irresponsible. It's something that's going to be key and going to be necessary to you. You are going to negotiate, you're going to persuade. So I would encourage you to embrace it and to become as good at it as suits your needs in that 40% of your time. The big problem with sales, and Andy referenced this earlier when he said, oh, you know what salespeople are like. People don't like salespeople. And there's a good reason for that. More than 60% of people, when they've had a sales call, come away thinking, man, I could have spent my time better. I did not enjoy that sales call. So I think one of the key things I'm impressing you today is a big part of sales is helping people to enjoy themselves while they're making a commercial decision. And so anything you can do to add value and to be in that 40% of sales calls where people say, you know what, that was interesting. I learned something there. I'm better off from having taken that call. That's what I'm going to encourage you to move towards today. The biggest problem overall is that only 3% of people trust salespeople. So that's 97% of people do not trust salespeople. So if you're like Andy and you have that instinctive reaction to sales, then you are not alone. You have the same percentage chance of trusting a salesperson as you do from being called down on The Price is Right. If you've ever seen that show. So it's not particularly high. So what can we do about that? And how can we make it so that in our sales and persuasion, whether that's a career or whether that's just something we do as part of our day-to-day, that we are effective and that people are better off with the experience? All right, so first of the 5 big lessons. Number 1 is set big goals and then break them down. Ultimately, whether you are in sales or not, and sales is just a really good case because it's so measurable. Over 30% of people, when I asked them what their favorite thing about sales, these business leaders, they said, I just love how you can measure whether you're good at sales or not. So it's easier to set goals in sales than other arenas. But regardless of your arena, I'd encourage you to write down your goals and really pull out what it is you want to achieve. This gentleman here, to my right, or potentially your left, is called Theo Davies. And he's been one of the biggest influences in my life. He's based in Singapore. He's the guy who recommended Toastmasters to me. He came second in the international speech competition in Asia Pacific about 6 years ago now. And he is also the record holder for this crazy door-to-door book job I did during my university summers. And what Theo did was he said, right, in order to have such a big goal, you have to take it seriously. And so he went to Edinburgh University, as I did, and he actually wrote a 10,000-word thesis on why he wanted to break this record. So that's going beyond saying, I want to be a record holder. It's saying, why? Why is this important to me? Why am I doing this? And then you really list out all the reasons and you make it concrete in your head why this is going to happen. And there's a big hill in the middle of Edinburgh called Arthur's Seat. And he used to run up off his seat, repeating his goal over to himself. I will be the record holder. I am amazing. I am happy. I am healthy. I am terrific. And those positive affirmations combined with the exertion, combined with the forming of his thinking around why I do this, made it happen. And he set an international record. He did 150,000 pounds of business in just one summer. And that record's held for 20 years until a young Estonian gentleman broke it last year. Why write down your goals? There's been a study by Forbes that says you're 40% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. So it's almost irresponsible not to. Like if I knew an investment was 40% more likely to go up, I would make that investment. If I knew I was 40% more likely to pass the course, I would make that course. So take the time, and if there's one thing you take away from this, maybe sit down after this meeting and write out your goals and what you accomplish, because chances are you'll make that happen. Lesson number 2 of my 5 biggest lessons: likes, likes. And so these two gentlemen are both huge influences on my career and on my life. Lee McCroskey has trained over 2,000 salespeople, and he is an absolute master in helping salespeople to be better and more effective. He's part of the John Maxwell team. He was the head of coaching at Southwestern for many, many years. And one of the things he always says is likes, likes. People like you if you are like them. And people like buying from salespeople who are like them as well. So if you're a little bit more expressive and you're the kind of person who speaks quite loudly, maybe you want a salesperson who does the same to you. And if you're a little bit more analytic and a little bit more reserved, then maybe you want to calm it down and speak a bit slower. And you just want to mirror and match what other people like and how they are, because then they will feel closer to you. You'll build a rapport much more easily. Stuart Lautherington here, he runs a major sales consultancy here in the UK. And he tells a story of how he went to Russia, not to judge for the next top model, but instead to judge the best salesperson in Europe, which apparently was a competition held there about 10 years ago. And he noticed all these salespeople were very different. Some were introverted, some were extroverted. You know, I was really keen to understand whether introverts or extroverts are better at sales, but it turns out there's no simple formula like that. It turns out what he noticed is that the people were very much like their customers who were the best salesperson. So he remembers a medical device salesman who's very introverted, because when you sell medical devices, you're literally across a counter from someone in the medical profession who will tend to be introverted as well. And he noticed insurance salespeople who are famous for being flashy and getting out there and getting things done. He noticed they were more extrovert. But the secret that he came away with is not be extroverted, be introverted, be loud, be quiet. It's be like your customers. And I think that's a big lesson that you can take away and say, right, if I'm having trouble influencing someone, am I making them feel comfortable by being like them? Lesson number 3. You have effectively a sell-by date in your job. So one of the big questions I had, having been on both sides, having ramped up in a job and found it very difficult at first. I didn't make my first sale when I joined Gartner for 6 months, which drove me crazy. Or getting towards the end of my career at Procter Gamble and thinking, man, I'm not really learning anything new here. I'm kind of just doing the same thing over and over again. So when is that optimal point? When should you be looking for another job? And when should you decide to stick it out? And most people had quite woolly answers, honestly, when they said, oh, you know, it sucks when you see someone who has, 1 year in 3 different jobs, or, you should always leave whenever you're not learning anything. But I wanted something a little bit more scientific than that. Enter Slim Earl, this gentleman here. He works for a company called the Chemistry Group, which specializes in personality testing to help salespeople be successful. And he shared with me a study. He's a brilliant guy. He'd be like your friendly neighborhood barista. He's just a lovable gentleman. And he shared with me a really valuable study that this chemistry group did, which says people are at their best in a job between 2 and 7 years. So if it's between 2 and 7 years, maybe don't worry as much about the ramp up. You know, you're not going to be your best before 2 years. If you're finding the first 6 months hard, everyone finds the first 6 months hard, whether it's sales or any other profession. And then after 7 years, maybe that's a time to think, right, have I accomplished everything I'm trying to do here? Is it time to move on? And I just thought that'd be a really helpful framework for thinking about your career and how long you want to do something and whether you've accomplished all you need to in that given role. Not a hard and fast rule, but I hope some food for thought. Lesson number 4, referrals are king or queen. Referrals are awesome, and they're such a good way to do business. This gentleman here is called Jason Dial, and he is the chairman of the second biggest direct suit sales company in the world. Now, what is a direct suit sales company, I hear you ask? These are people who, in the pre-COVID world, would literally go to lawyers, officers, to big accountants, to top business leaders, and measure them and sell them a suit. And understandably, referrals are a big part of that. Who else do you know who might value a good suit? Who really likes wearing lovely jackets and is the best dressed in your office? Who takes a lot of pride in their appearance and can afford to buy themselves some really nice clothes? And one thing Jason shared with me is the ratio of referrals versus cold calls. Referrals are 30 times more effective. 30. So if you were to make 30 phone calls, you can expect to get as many meetings as a single referral. So whenever you're doing something and you're just putting it out there on social media or anything like that, and you're not tailoring your message or asking your friends for referrals, whether that's needing a plumber or whether that's dating, you're not making yourself as effective as if you just ask people who are in a position to help you, can you help me with this problem? Who do you know in your network who can help you? And just to prove that your network is your net worth, it's really how I've gone about building my own sales team. This lady here is called Connie Smith. She's fantastic. She works and 100% through referrals with businesses in Africa trying to build their sales team in sustainably focused companies. So she's got a really cool mandate in what she does. And I said, Connie, this is while I was interviewing for the book. I said, Connie, I'm really struggling to find a good head of sales. Do you know anyone? And she said, I know exactly the person. And in fact, I'm going to give you 3 options because I think there are 3 people you should consider who'd be excellent. And within a day, I have 3 different candidates, and my head of sales, who also sold educational books, Henrietta Curtis, was a referral from Connie. So there will be people like Connie in your network who are just amazing facilitators, connectors. Rupa on this call is definitely one of them. And please, leverage them. Don't be afraid to ask, because it'll make you 30 times more effective in what you're doing. Oh. The last lesson. It's hard to be nervous when your mind is on service. And that's exactly what's helping get me through this call. I was fairly nervous coming into this, but I just keep thinking, how can I add value to the audience? How can I make sure this is a good use of everyone who's watching's time? And I think that's a big lesson I learned from this, is the best salespeople don't think of themselves as salespeople or persuaders. They think about themselves as providing a much needed service to the world. JT Olson on this side is an extreme example, but I think a good one. He runs a charity, and his job is fundraising for that charity, selling to people why they should invest. They should put their money in this charity rather than another charity. His charity gathers money so that people can get together and help a widow fix her house and help her to adopt an orphan. So it's called the Both Hands Foundation, and it's doing an awful lot of good in the Nashville area where JT Olson lives. And I say the energy and the passion when he talks about this, you're helping improve a woman's life, you're helping improve a kid's life, you are making a genuine difference to the people in your own neighborhood by doing this. I mean, the conviction and the excitement which he talks about is palpable. And it was really inspiring to hear about. One of the things that JT says is his job is not selling. His job is thanking people. He's thanking people for their donation. He's thanking people for considering the charity. And the more he thanks people, the more people give again and again and again. So I think there's a big lesson in there in thanking people in your own life. It's such an easy thing to do, but we do so little of it. This other gentleman is Andrew Santos, and Andrew runs one of the biggest direct insurance companies in the United States called Compass Group. And Compass Group, obviously, they go door to door, they sell insurance to people, they give them downside protection, they potentially improve people's lives. It's not necessarily in itself the most inspiring product ever, but it is a very, very valuable and important one, as Andrew will tell you. So every day, Andrew went out and knocked on doors and set an example for his team by selling insurance. And then one day they decided to go to Colorado for an away trip, and they decided to go to Colorado Springs city there and have a good time, but also work really hard and meet some new people and sell some new people some insurance. And after 3 days, Andrew had already hit his target. He's already done the amount of revenue he wanted to. He's thinking about taking the next 2 days off as a holiday. But then one of the junior salespeople said, Andrew, I'd love to follow you tomorrow. I'd love to see how you sell because your results are so incredible. I'd like to be on that level. So he said, oh man, all right, I guess. I was planning to take tomorrow off, but if you're going to follow me, I'll go do it. And he knocks on this door, and it's this lovely family, and they're quite excited about the idea, and they get it. They're like, yeah, I mean, anything could happen to us. And in the United States, there's no NHS, so there's no protection. If you were to fall sick, they bought full health insurance and cancer specific insurance. And that was that. He didn't give it a second thought. He's made several hundred of these types of sales. About a year later, he gets a phone call, and he's like, "Oh my God, there's something gone wrong. Like, why is a random number calling me?" And the gent who he sold to a year ago says, "Andrew, I just wanted to call and thank you. Like a month after you came and visited us, our oldest daughter got diagnosed with cancer. And without the insurance you'd sold us that day, we would have lost our house, we'd have lost our car, we'd have absolutely nothing, we'd be destitute. Instead, your insurance has paid out £100,000 and she's getting the best medical treatment possible in Denver, Colorado." So he went back and he tells the story of knocking on that same door as, with some of his team so they could get conviction in their product and the benefits it can give in the right scenario. And he remembers the wife crying, the husband crying, he cried, and it was an incredibly moving moment. So finding that way in which you're providing a service and having conviction in what you do because you genuinely feel like it's the right thing for someone to buy. I made a promise to myself. When I was selling educational books, I did not believe in the product. I was doing it for me and me only, and the people buying were just a mechanism for my success. I will now only sell products I have full conviction in and that I believe in, and that I can comfortably sit here and say, I am providing a service that is making that person across the tables life better. And I'd encourage you in your sales, in your persuasion, in your talking about your clubs, that you have the same mindset of, how can I add as much value as humanly possible to this person? And that is everything from me. So just to summarize, I'd encourage you to set huge goals. I'd encourage you to be like the people you're selling to. I'd encourage you to ask for and give referrals. I'd encourage you to have your mind on service. And I encourage you to think about whether or not what you're doing right now is the right thing for you in terms of the time you've been there. I hope that's been really helpful, and I'm very open to any questions.
So before we do any questions, can we just please have a round of applause for Jamie there? And I think that was a really interesting webinar from the point, it was a very personal point of view in terms of these lessons. And I think that was really, really useful for getting that point across. So well done to Jamie. Thank you very, very much indeed for that. So we don't appear to have any questions in the chat. So if anybody has any questions from the floor, please unmute yourselves and ask away. Chris.
Oh dear. Hi, Jamie. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. I was just curious. Did you have any, doing the book, what was your biggest surprise, or did you have any preconceptions going into it that the preconception was just turned on its head during these 116 interviews?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes, loads. I think that I had assumed that extroverts were the best at selling. That is definitely not the case. I mean, I'm quite extroverted myself, so and obviously I'd had some success. So I thought, a typical, I think because I'm good, everyone must be like me in order to be good. That's not the case at all. It is really, like I said, depending on the industry, many industries, you're better off being an introvert to sell successfully if you're selling to introverts. So that was a big one for me. I also realized how unmoney motivated most business leaders are. I think it's that classic truism that, if you don't think about money, it comes to you more easily. And money was the top motivator for 2 of my 116 interviews, which is not what you expect from top salespeople. So that was a big surprise for me.
Wonderful. Alistair has asked, what are your strategies to get referrals?
That's a really good question, and you can get quite technical. So we use SBR training, and I mentioned Stuart Lautherington there to do it. And so number one is ask for them. So few people ask for referrals, and it sounds so basic. But I challenge you to think, like, last time you really needed to get something done, did you go out and ask for referrals, and did you give people the opportunity to give them to you? So that's number one. Number two is, once you've asked, do you know anyone? And they've said, oh, I know loads of people. Get specific. What do you actually need that person to be? I am really looking for a salesperson with 5 to 10 years of experience, who's been a good business development manager and is ready to take that step up to my head of sales position. Or I am really looking for a plumber or like a maid who is both reliable and extremely charismatic. Do you know anyone? And the more specific you get, the more likely someone's going to go, oh yes, I do know someone who exactly fits that description. So it's helping them to help you by jogging their memory. And then the other thing is, once they've given you one, if you feel like there are more referrals there and they probably know more people, you go, okay, cool, who else? And then you can, that can really, from a sales perspective, that can get you more leads, or at least it can give you more options to consider in whatever task it is that you're, who else, who do you know who's really big into self-improvement and might want to join your Toastmasters club? Who do you know who struggles with their confidence and for whom Toastmasters might be most helpful? And that can be a really good way of drafting a lead list for your club.
Cool, thank you. Kat has asked, how do you best deal with people you have to sell that are not like you?
It's very difficult is the answer. And you don't, what I wouldn't recommend is trying to be a different person. It just doesn't work apart from anything else. But definitely recommend a few things. The number one thing I'm looking for is how loudly someone speaks, fast they speak, and how expressive they are with their hands and how authoritative, and I'll try and match that. So I'm not trying to be the same person as them, but I am trying to, naturally, I'm very expressive. I talk with my hands, I speak fast. How can I adapt that to help the other person be more comfortable and move towards where they are without going all the way to exactly where they are?
Wonderful. So, question from me: all the sort of sales techniques you talked about involve a certain amount of confidence, but what would you say to people that aren't very confident salespeople? They can be confident in other areas like the public speaking, but actually when it comes to that sales, they almost kind of back away because they're afraid to do it. They're afraid of that rejection.
Yeah, completely. It is an extra challenge that people need to deal with. And I was watching a masterclass with Daniel Pink, who I mentioned his book earlier in the talk, and he was talking about how the human tendency to catastrophize puts a lot of people off sales. So I think one of the key things is to remember that any rejection is temporary and it's not personal. And to get some perspective and context, people aren't saying no to you, they're saying no to your product, and they're saying no for a good reason. And frankly, if you ask 10 people, they're not all going to say no. So having that perspective really helps. Another element is to make sure that whatever you're selling, whatever you're persuading, your club, whatever it is, you have conviction in it. And so you won't be nervous if you really feel like it's the right thing for the other person.
Cool. Rupa.
Yeah, just to echo that and sort of come back full circle. Yeah, I was VPM in my club when we needed sales, for want of a better phrase. But then over the years, we've had different types of VPM, and some of them have been quite shy and introvert. It totally goes back to, do you believe in your club, and do you believe that that guest is a fit for your club, and therefore you'll feel comfortable about, for want of a better phrase, closing the sale.
There's a great thing called a buying atmosphere as well. So the whole idea is you don't force anyone to buy, you give them the option to buy. And the most successful clubs I've seen in recruiting members have been the ones who've said, you know, a whole bunch of speakers, I think, used to have this policy when they were frankly oversubscribed at one point, where they said, look, you come back 3 or 4 times, visit other clubs, like just do what's right for you. We'll still be here. We'll still be the most fun, funniest club. Like, we don't think you'll have a better time elsewhere, but you should give that a go. And that makes other people feel a lot more confident and comfortable in their overall decision.
So Rose has asked, how do you deal with prospects who ask for time to think about it? I'm not sure. Yeah, can I just have a bit of time just to mull it over?
Yeah, it's the number one thing that kills a good sales pipeline is not no's, it's maybes. Right? So I guess maybe what the technical skills you'd use to do that in sales could also be useful in the rest of life. Some of it depends on how complex the sale is. If it's a simple yes or no, and I actually think joining a Toastmasters club is quite a complex sale, right? There's a lot of buy-in needed. There's a lot of things that people really, need to consider, and it's a significant time commitment. So that is a more complex sale. So in a simple sale, on a more simple sale, I think it's the right thing to ask for a decision then and there, whether it's a yes or a no. Like if it's like, should we get pizza? Like you want a yes or a no then and there. So ask for that. If it's, do you want to join the Toastmasters club? It's about agreeing a jointly agreed timeline. So what I think we should do, Rose, is, you come here today, you've done a table topic, you've nailed it, amazing. I think you should come back next week, see whether you enjoy that. Okay, you can't make next week, 2 weeks. But by the end of May, I think you'll have a good sense of whether or not this is for you or not. So can we agree that by the end of May, you'll either join Holborn Speakers or you won't? So by having that pre-agreed, mutually agreed timeline, you're going to get the yes or no you need and avoid the killer maybes.
Deanna has asked, how long did it take you to write your book?
So to write the book, about a month. To do the overall research, 2.5 years. So fairly intense project. Certainly ended up being a lot bigger than I did, but towards the end, it was just about doing the interviewees like Rupa, like Brad, like Chris, who are on this call, justice for the time they'd given me and the insight they'd given me. So it became more about just making sure that it was done properly, more so than how much time was actually spent on it in the end. If anyone out there, do not write a book if you want to make any money. That's my my big piece of advice. It's got to be a labor of love.
So we look forward to seeing Jana's book for Christmas 2024. Malloretti says, how to pitch demo in the first place.
Yeah, so simple answer to that is the same way you do a speech. Practice, practice, practice. The more you care about it, the more you practice, and the more you practice, the better you will get. But what I would say is the demo is the least important part of a sale. I know it sounds, but the most important bit is asking good questions and caring about the other person's perspective and helping to diagnose whether or not your product is a fit. Much more so than it is actually demoing something in the slickest possible way.
So Olga says, the question very similar to my question. I'm not a salesperson. I hate selling stigma, and how to overcome those. And I say that question was from a personal experience, in that I did sales jobs and I was bloody awful at them, quite frankly, because I just didn't have the confidence in what I was doing. So, yeah, if you want a link to the book, it's Rupa's put it into the chat. That's exceptionalsalescareer.com. Cheers, just saying thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Deanna, yeah. So it can be ordered from the website, Deanna. So we'll make sure that when I send the link out to the YouTube video, we'll make sure there's a copy of the link in there. No problem at all. So Deanna's actually going to buy 10 copies there, Jamie.
It's pretty given that there are 100 lessons in word caution, it is information, but I hope a lot of it is really valuable.
I've got a question, just because I'm surprised it hasn't been asked yet. We're at that time of year where we need to elect new club officers for next year, and even the high-performing clubs is actually struggling with this. So what tips and advice would you give people in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is something I went through just as lockdown was hitting towards the end of my presidential tenure. Home and speakers. I was really lucky that Chris Soprano on this call stepped up and was willing to do what's been an amazing job of keeping that club running. I mean, it's a complex sale, frankly. It really is. It's you know, you're asking people to make a big commitment based on their personal development, and with no material reward. So it's not the easiest pitch, right? So my guidance would be, make sure you have conviction that the person is right and it will be right for them, and that will really come across when you're talking to the person. Agree a timeline with people. Again, these maybes are going to kill you. They really are. All the people who are like, yeah, I'll think about it if things break right, if I get this job, if I don't get this job, that's not going to work, right? You have to have an all-star roster to run your, and they have to be locked in, committed. They have to be, ready to get trained and to step up into those leadership roles. So agree timelines with people and get yes/no decisions, and write down what you want and what you think the other person wants. Verify that's true, and see if you can mix and match with the various roles you have available. A good challenge, but one, I think, one of the ways that, and the other thing you can do in this is ask for referrals, right? If someone doesn't want to be the VPE, you might be like, okay, who else in the club do you think might enjoy this kind of challenge? And that will make you 30 times more effective in finding the right person, assuming you have 30 members.
Chris, you've got this
Fantastic.
already, haven't you, mate?
Okay, any more question? Question from Chris, would you like to be president of Holborn Speakers again?
I really think there's someone else who would get more value out of it than me.
Cool. So just checking to see if there's, I think we've gone through all the questions on the chat. Are there any more questions in the room?
Yes, I have a question.
Gia, then John.
Hello. So I'd like to know, please, because I'm putting myself forward for VPM for the coming up year for the Toastmasters. What's the best way to deal with someone who really would like to be part of the Toastmasters club, but there isn't any real urgency to join right now? What would be the best way to deal with that?
It's a really good question. Actually, driving urgency is one of the most difficult things in sales process.
Yeah.
Now versus later. I think the best thing to do would be to understand why it is that they want to join Toastmasters at all. Is it leadership? Is it the confidence? And say to them, we can talk about this forever, but you know, what benefits would it bring you if you were to be more confident now as opposed to being more confident in a year? What kind of difference over the next year? And once they have, and I think the important thing is to get them to say it. You can't tell someone anything and have them 3% of believe, right? But if you get them to say, you know, I really could benefit over the next year. If I were more confident, I could get that pay rise and whatever it is. The moment they say those words, that's when they're ready to be brought on board.
Do you have any specific suggestions for guiding questions to ask them?
Yeah, I think, I'm of the belief that if you have a genuine curiosity, the right questions will come.
Okay. Yeah.
But also, you know, if you were, questions were always great because it gets the imagination going, right? So if you were to join Toastmasters, what would be the big, you know, if you were to go up to table topic every week, what benefit do you think that would give you? Yeah, so get their imagination.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that.
Cool. Thanks, John.
Hi, Jamie. I see that you're a CFA. How does that fit into your story?
It really doesn't, John, to the point where I've actually stopped paying for the designation, even though my company would, in theory, pay for it. It was much like this book. I've always enjoyed having a project. So for 3 years, my project was getting a financial exam in case I went into finance. But I enjoy sales more than I enjoy finance.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for asking.
Yamina's got a couple of questions. Firstly, how much is your book?
Rupert, how much is our book right
now? Might do a bit of a deal for people on this call, but it's $7.99 for the ebook and $12.99 for paperback at the moment, or from the website.
Cool. I mean, so side note, we should reduce that. We should just be trying to get it out there. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
And Yamina also asks, can you give an example of one of your big goals and how you broke it down?
Yeah, absolutely. So writing this book was a big goal. So I broke this down by interviews per week. Was my I use what is called CSFs, critical success factors, and the idea behind that is I track certain things that are really important to me every day, which range from things like days but I don't smoke a cigarette to you know, days worked out to people interviewed for roles at React News. So one of my big CSF that I broke down was, you know, if I had to do 100 interviews, I needed to do at least 3 a week for the 30 weeks, which I wanted to get it done. So I was tracking against that. For my club, my business now, we have a very firm goal of 4.5 million of revenue in our second full year, and so we track that on a weekly basis. What I'll be doing after this call is sending out an update to the team, telling us exactly how we're doing, exactly how we're tracking on our pipeline, exactly. So you improve what you measure is a statement I've always believed in. So make sure that you're measuring the right things, and they'll improve.
Cool. And the other question was from the 5 lessons, which one resonates more with you?
The one that surprised me this was the 2 to 7 years, because I'd never thought of that in that way. But they all resonate to different. And the one that helped me the most in making this presentation, preparing this presentation, is being service-minded. I think you can never be service-minded enough, and the more service-minded you are, the better a salesperson you are.
Oh, apologies, my voice is going, which is going to be great for tomorrow morning. Even says, how do you handle when potential buyer makes up an argument to say no? In other words, how do you just handle a fake reason for rejection?
Absolutely, and you'll get them all the time. People don't like saying what they mean. Firstly, I thank them, because it's very important to thank people for any objections they give you. Then if I don't understand it, I'll try and clarify it. But if I do, the technical way which I handle objections is to you know, what's called feel, felt, found. You know, so talking about a similar experience another prospect had and how they got through that objection and ended up purchasing my product. So it's bringing in the aspect of storytelling, and other people like you also feel that way, but have found a way to improve their lives through purchasing whatever you're selling.
Rose asks, can one really enjoy selling?
Yes, Rose. What is tougher to enjoy is not selling. So that is the problem. Most of your time in sales is spent not selling. So selling is awesome. Selling, you're on top of the world, right? Make money, people love you. But not selling requires a lot of discipline to keep going. Scheduling, it requires a lot of positive affirmations to not let your attitude go down. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about selling, but we can work on some techniques to help you to not sell.
Chris asks, have you experienced cool, sorry, just gone off the screen now. Have you ever experienced cool reluctance? If so, how do you plow through it?
As in my own personal reluctance to call? I'll take the question that way. The answer is yes. Every single day, I don't want to pick up the phone. It's the toughest bit of the job. So how do I get through it? I have it in my calendar that I'm going to do it, which keeps me accountable. And I tell my team how often I did it every week, which keeps me accountable as well. So I have reasons and whys why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that usually helps me to get through it.
Deepa, how do you deal with rude behavior in sales?
Hi, Deepa. Honored you could join. I can't imagine what time it is in India right now. How do I deal with rude people? It depends how rude they are, is the answer. If they're mildly rude, I will try and understand and sympathize and know they're having a bad day. And if they're super important, if they're too rude, then I will, and I tell this to my team as well. Like, some sales aren't worth it. You don't need to sell to everyone, and there are enough good people out there that will buy your product.
Cool. Any more questions? We've had some great questions tonight.
Thank you guys all so much for all the thoughtful questions, and I hope that's all helpful.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then we will wrap this up for tonight. Can we just have another big round of applause, please, for Jamie? I think that was fantastic. And as I say, we will get this out on YouTube, hopefully at the end of the week, laptop permitting. This is going to have another darn good thrashing again. So thank you very much for your time this evening. It's always great. I need to pick a winner, don't I, for the book? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, if I bring up the list here, we've got everybody's names on the screen, and I'm just going to, I can't see what the hell I'm pointing at, so. Gia. So well done to Gia. We will be in touch and give you a copy of that book. But thank you very much to everybody else, and as I say, it's available from the website. So feel free to enjoy. We are back next Sunday at 7 o'clock. There aren't many more left in this series. Now we're finishing at the end of June. If you want to be next year's Zoom troll, by the way, then applications are open. We are looking for a new Zoom troll. So apart from the else, I can have a Sunday off. So it is on the District 91 website. If you would like to apply to be the webinar manager for next year, please feel free or drop. Thank you, but or drop myself or Helena or Rupa a message, and we will be quite happy to talk to you. So whatever you're up to, have a fantastic week. Enjoy the slightly warmer weather we've got here in the UK, and whatever you're doing, please stay safe, and we will see you soon. On behalf of Jamie and myself, thank you very much indeed. Good night.